asking the tough questions, getting results for you. The News 4i team is here for you.
Guys got eyes, ears, good to go? When people come to the gun range, they want to shoot guns and they want to shoot machine guns because it is kind of fun.
Machine guns, which are firearms that can shoot automatically with a single trigger pull, are highly regulated by the ATF. But Joshua Felker, owner of Lone Star Handgun, is among a small group of people across the country who can not only lawfully possess machine guns, but also rent them out for demos here at his range. He showed us just how this tiny device can take this to this.
It burns through a 33-round mag in a couple seconds, if that.
The bite-sized conversion device is known as a Glock switch, but contrary to its street name, can be put on any make of firearm. And having one without the proper approval can result in serious federal charges, something a dozen people learned firsthand last week after the ATF conducted raids on an organization they say were trafficking stolen firearms, some of them machine guns and machine gun conversion devices, with the intent to take them across the southern border into Mexico. The operations were part of a statewide initiative called Operation Texas Kill Switch, which put switches in the crosshairs of law enforcement.
That adds the danger to the weapons, it adds the unpredictability of the weapons, and it makes them less accurate, which provides greater risk to the public.
Just how unpredictable? One of 3 gunmen arrested in connection with a shooting at a Texas Juneteenth celebration earlier this year lost control of his handgun that was outfitted with a Glock switch. That, according to court documents. The shooting claimed the lives of 2 women and resulted in injuries to 14 others. But even in a controlled setting like a gun range,
This is the full auto, and I tried to control that grouping, but as you can see, majority of them didn't even hit the target. And I'm what I would consider a professional of this.
in contrast,
This are 15 rounds with the semi-automatic Glock 19. Everything was within that circle.
but where enforcement fails, experts hope that education can make people aware of the dangers the quarter-sized devices can pack in the wrong hands and settings.
If you don't educate your kids about firearms and how to hold them and use them properly, they're going to get stuff off of what they see off of TV, their friends, and that may not be the proper education.
For the News 4i team, I'm Mariah Medina.
Car thieves are using a device to intercept your code from your car's key fob so they can steal your car. How you can protect yourself. Most of us don't think about our key fob until it's time to leave the house, but it sends out an electronic signal that can be intercepted even when it's not in use.
2 weeks ago, Tiffany Gibson's brand new Range Rover disappeared from her driveway while she and her family slept.
It felt like a complete violation of space, and it was just a very hard thing to swallow. Like, hey, this happened right in front of my home.
Gibson checked her security camera video, which captured how easy it was. A car pulls up and one of the thieves gets out, walks right up to Gibson's car and opens the door without breaking a window or using a Slim Jim. It was as if they had a fob of their own, which they also used to quickly start the car and drive off. Later, police told Gibson the thieves likely used a device to grab the signal coming from her key fob inside the house and relayed that signal out to the driveway, essentially tricking her vehicle.
And so what that does is lets your car assume that you have your key in the vicinity to unlock the door and then ultimately to start the vehicle.
So police recommend you don't keep your key fob anywhere near your front door or windows within range of a relay device outside. Instead, keep your keys somewhere in the center of your home. As an extra precaution, you could keep them in a metal bowl or box.
Have a designated kitchen drawer and put your keys in there, away from the front doors.
Fortunately, Gibson used a GPS app to locate her car quickly, and it was recovered by police. But she learned a valuable lesson about her key fob.
I had no idea that that was possible.
You may want to buy one of these Faraday bags. They block any signal coming from your key fob. What you do is you drop the fob in there and seal up the bag, and now I can't start my car or unlock the doors because the signal's been blocked. For the News 4i team, I'm Jay Avila.
You don't stand a chance when there's a pack. We need to clean up the streets, or we're going to end up with another tragedy.
Packs of dogs captured on doorbell cameras running around this southeast side neighborhood. Erin Gallegos Reed says she's called and reported them to 311 and her council person more than 24 times.
And they'll tell you, well, it'll take us 2 to 3 days. That dog is not waiting for you for 2 to 3 days.
She says the biggest danger is for kids waiting at the bus stop or walking to school. Highland Park Elementary School closed this year as a part of what San Antonio ISD calls right-sizing. That means more kids are now walking these sidewalks to Japhet, dodging traffic and packs of dogs.
The child faces double the danger.
This isn't the only neighborhood dealing with this issue. SAISD tells us a Hot Wells middle school student had a, quote, encounter with a dog on the way to school. District police tracked down the dog and then notified Animal Care Services. Jesse Uresti says this has been a long-standing issue on this side of town.
People have used this area as a dumping ground.
He says the dogs aren't always aggressive, and he feels that ACS is doing the best it can with what they have. But Reed says after last year's major budget increase and another potential boost this year,
the money belongs to the taxpayer who sits here and suffers with the streets littered with dogs.
ACS says they've been doing targeted sweeps in areas surrounding schools, even citing a resident for helping 2 dogs escape from an officer in this area. The agency says they've also put out a humane trap where these animals have been seen roaming around, adding, quote, loose dogs put our children and our neighbors in danger. For the News 4i team, I'm Jordan Elder.
Well, everybody out here has a story. I'll probably tell you about 9/10 of them.
Bert Bell's roots run deep in Carrizo Springs, with 4 generations of Bells buried right here at Mount Hope Cemetery, where he serves on the association that manages the hundreds of historic plots on the publicly owned land. And the way locals like Bert tell it, the cemetery has enjoyed free water from the city until very recently, when he got a call from the city manager.
She called me one afternoon at 4:30 and informed me they was cutting the water off because it's now against the law for them to give us water, where for the past 100 years it hadn't been.
An agreement dating back to when the city's founder, Levi English, donated the land to the city, though Bell, the city's historian, acknowledges that English didn't read or write. But what troubled Bell the most was what appeared to be a lack of planning behind the decision.
And I asked him, I said, how much water are we using? Well, I don't know. Well, if we go to paying for water, how much would it be? I don't know. Well, what if? And every question I asked was, I don't know.
Bert says they're not asking for handouts and are ready to pay their fair share if need be. But they want the city to enforce this across the board.
City manager indicated there were 7 different entities she's shutting the water off.
We tried to talk to the newly appointed city manager, Azalea Garcia, to see what other entities were impacted and why now. She declined to talk to us on camera, but pointed us to a statement provided to the local paper, which fails to answer those questions. Though she did say the move had nothing to do with a 2019 audit that revealed the city was losing 71 million gallons of water per year, or close to 19% of its water production. Recommendations from that audit included an overhaul of the town's piping. Much like Bell,
nobody expected it to disappear overnight, which literally the water did.
Mary Lou Martin wants to ensure that the grounds have some connection to the utility to protect and preserve the land.
This was my mother and my father.
Where they too will someday take their final rest.
We care about our history here. We're very proud of it. His father did an amazing job of keeping the history of Dimmitt County alive. And Bert is doing the same thing, the legacy that comes with it.
While the water is currently flowing at the cemetery to assess how much water is being used, for how long remains to be seen. But Bell and Martin say they're willing to go the distance for a solution.
History written or verbal is important because without it, we don't know who we are, where we come from, and it always repeats itself.
For the News 4i team.
Later, pride and history will repeat itself.
I'm Mariah Medina.
The judge votes aye. Motion carries.
Despite a looming lawsuit from the Texas AG, Bexar County commissioners last week voted to pay $392,000 to an Austin firm called Civic Government Solutions. A number of speakers objected because the company's CEO has voiced pro-Democrat views, but he denied his company is partisan.
Yes, I have a personal view of who I want to win. That does not influence the way that a company works.
Others were upset CGS was hired as a sole source vendor, meaning it did not have to compete against other bidders, which is usually the case for agreements of this size.
None of it passes the smell test. None of it. It's ill-conceived and it's ill-advised.
State law allows the county to skip the competitive bidding process. It's called a discretionary exemption. Even if there are many vendors offering similar services, it can single out one company if it offers something unique the other bidders don't have.
I did not think it was appropriate.
Precinct 3 Commissioner Grant Moody was the only no vote against the deal. He says many organizations are registering voters already without asking for public money.
First of all, we heard from our elections administrator about all the groups who are out there doing this today. There's PACs doing it, the state parties are doing it in terms of sending out voter registration applications.
In this letter to Bexar County's purchasing department, CGS argued it qualifies for the sole source exemption because its proprietary data, specialized expertise, and advanced technology can target eligible unregistered voters in a way other groups can't.
The fact that county staff accepted CGS's argument that they had a proprietary database and they were the only ones who could do this, I mean, we can't take somebody's word for it.
The county's purchasing agent denied doing that when questioned by Moody at the meeting.
I made a good faith effort in searching for other suppliers who do provide this, and I did not find that.
County Judge Peter Sakai did not respond to a request for a one-on-one interview, and Commissioner Justin Rodriguez, who sponsored the deal, told me he couldn't comment because of the pending litigation. The way the agreement was approved left critics skeptical.
Oh, and one last thing, if you do open it up to bidding, I'll do it for $300,000. I will save the taxpayers $92,700. Thank you.
For the News 4i team, I'm Jay Avila.
You made it into the building?
Yeah. What we saw on May 24th goes to show you that training needs to be done and they need more tactical skills.
For Javier Cazares, educating others and promoting change has become a life mission in memory of his daughter Jackie, who died at Robb Elementary.
Keep an eye up on top on the roof.
Several reports have shown that the law enforcement officers tasked with protecting Jackie didn't have proper training. And nearly 2.5 years later, some still don't.
It so doesn't surprise me that they're failing to do what they should be doing.
Uvalde Police Chief Homer Delgado and Assistant Chief Mike Davis invited us to see part of their active shooter training in June.
In the 2 years since the tragedy, there have been some officers that have not had active shooter training up until right now. Why is that?
That was our number one priority when we came on board, is exploring that. And when we noticed that there may be some gaps or deficiencies in minimum training, we put those individuals to the head of the line.
Davis and Chief Delgado both stepped into their positions this year, hoping to build back some of the trust that was lost in that Robb Elementary hallway.
This training is designed specifically to address situations that arise as Robb did.
CJ James is a senior instructor with the Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training Center, or ALERT, running several trainings in Uvalde.
The importance is that there's a baseline there that all of them can speak to. So while their shoulder patches don't all match, the language matches.
When we looked at the training records again in mid-July, we found improvements. At the Uvalde County Sheriff's Office, we identified 9 employees who haven't had active shooter training since the mass shooting. 6 of those are reserve, meaning they're not serving on a day-to-day basis. Records show there are 3 officers and 1 dispatcher still waiting for training at the Uvalde Police Department.
And we are on track to get that completed.
Both agencies have announced that every employee will have to complete active shooter training by the end of December.
Am I happy with it? It should have been done already, but it's a start. And, I'm glad this new chief is actually trying to do things, to make things better.
And training documents show some officers are going beyond the state's minimum requirements. Davis says this is one of many steps they're taking to build back trust with their community.
If we don't take this seriously, there's no reason to, carry that badge.
For the News 4i team, I'm Jordan Elder. The non-citizen unit was intended to reduce the amount of time non-citizens accused of committing crimes in the U.S. spend at the Bexar County Jail, projected at one point to save taxpayers at least $902,000 annually. But Precinct 3 Commissioner Graham Moody is not convinced of the return.
I think voters, citizens, constituents are very concerned about taxpayer dollars being used to defend non-citizens, illegal immigrants who have come into contact with the criminal justice system, committed a crime, and then we are actually defending them from potential deportation.
The Sixth Amendment guarantees criminal defendants the right to an attorney, even if they can't pay. That includes individuals who are in the country illegally and those who are not citizens of the U.S. For years, Bexar County defendants who can't afford an attorney have been appointed counsel, but now the county has a unit that exclusively serves those who are not citizens of the U.S., to the tune of several hundreds of thousands of dollars. This in addition to the Public Defender's Office and the Managed Assigned Counsel Office, which also provides immigration consultations to criminal defendants.
So if you're just thinking of the Public Defender's Office, our unit specifically just designates 2 additional public defenders to help ease the pressure off of non-citizen representation.
Initial projections estimated that the non-citizens unit, which is within the Public Defender's Office, would handle 40 individuals with ICE holds a month.
And do you have, based on, you said 4 cases so far?
4, yeah. We started taking cases after the full team was hired in July, so then it took time for onboarding and building out.
And it's not for lack of clientele. New federal data published by the Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse shows San Antonio was among the top 10 cities to receive ICE detainers, commonly called immigration holds, during the Trump administration, with more than 5,000 detainers issued. And under the Biden administration, just under 5,000 detainers issued. Moody and Bexar County Judge Peter Sakai earlier this month probed what the new unit does that differs from the current court-appointed attorney program, and were left without any answer. Today, Moody's office says they still have yet to get that answer from that office, but will continue to follow the money. For the News 4i team, I'm Mariah Medina.
We mentioned there are 3 projects. The first one is the Lower Broadway closure, which goes from north of downtown all the way to Alamo Plaza. Now, the city says it plans to have that substantially completed by the Final 4. And the same goes for the Zona Cultura project, which has closed parts of West Commerce and South Santa Rosa. The city expects it to be substantially finished by early April. But then we have the South Alamo project, which has closed this very busy section here near the convention center. It is not going to be done, and the city says it's going to have to pause construction during the event.
What exactly does pause construction mean? We wanted to ask the city that, but they would not make anyone available for an interview with the I-Team. Public Works did send us an email saying it's still determining what to do with South Alamo Street during the Final 4. Options include plating over underground construction, installing temporary asphalt, adding lighting, adjusting barricades, and cleaning up the work site. Art galleries, restaurants, and other businesses in the La Villita area have seen a huge drop in business during the construction.
We don't have the foot traffic like we used to. The art is not moving like it used to, and it just doesn't seem like the tourists are here.
Flo Landsteiner says she and the other artists use their proceeds to pay the rent, which is difficult the longer construction drags on. And she's not crazy about the possibility of putting down temporary asphalt just to rip it up again after the Final 4.
You're going to end up spending more money to take that Band-Aid off and fix it again. So, yeah, it's just definitely a waste of money, in my opinion.
One of the things we had hoped to ask the city in an interview was how much the pause would add to the project's budget. For now, they won't say, but the budget has gone up from $41 million when work began in 2022 to a current estimate of $44 million.
Most of the cost of the project is being paid for with money we borrowed for the 2017 bond. SAWS is also paying millions toward the project. For the News 4i team, I'm Jay Avila. We currently have HOV lanes on I-10 and 281 North outside 1604. TxDOT wants to add them to portions of 1604 and I-35, and they're being studied for closer in sections of I-10 and 281.
We watched the HOV lanes on I-10 and 281 North and observed what many drivers complain about. The lanes are supposed to be just for vehicles with more than one occupant to encourage ride sharing. But we noticed a lot of solo drivers using the lanes as an extra passing lane.
Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen a vehicle with more than one passenger in it, which, is against the rule. So that's a little maddening.
SAPD enforces our HOV lanes, and they told us a ticket can run $232 if they catch you crossing the double white lines to improperly enter the lane, or if you disregard the signs requiring 2 or more occupants per vehicle. Sarah Crimmins, who drives I-10 every day, doesn't believe those violations are a high priority for SAPD.
If there's no enforcement, to me, I think it would make sense just to open it up and let everybody use it.
That's the direction they're going in Dallas and Houston. They removed the pylons separating HOV lanes from other lanes, and now anyone can use them except during peak traffic hours.
When it's not congested, we open it up for any vehicle. When it is congested, we're still restricting it to the HOVs and the electric vehicles, the green vehicles.
Natalie Betker of the North Central Texas Council of Governments says drivers were using the lanes improperly and enforcement was difficult.
It's hard for anybody to look in a vehicle and say, oh, there's 2 people in there. Okay, now I got to go chase them down and give them a ticket for this. So the enforcement element of it is very challenging, and it's not safe.
We asked if there are any plans to open up our HOV lanes to regular traffic during off-peak hours. In an email, TxDOT says it does have flexibility based on travel and traffic demand. However, currently, HOV lanes have been identified as the most effective option in order to preserve capacity and reduce congestion for the traveling public. So it doesn't look like we'll be making a lane change anytime soon.
Open it up so that there's another full lane of traffic for everybody.
For the News 4i team, I'm Jay Avila.
Bexar County Commissioner Grant Moody's Precinct 3 includes the only 2 HOV lanes currently operating. Those are on Interstate 10 and Highway 281 North. Moody says he's been talking to TxDOT about possibly opening up those carpool lanes to all traffic during certain hours of the day.
Our investigation Monday night showed how they've already made that change in Dallas and Houston. HOV lanes that used to be limited to cars with more than one occupant have been open to all traffic except during peak traffic times. Moody says his constituents have complained to him that our carpool lanes are barely being used.
One of the questions I had for TxDOT was, could we at least put hours on when these HOV lanes are going to be in effect? Because a lot of times it's just underutilized pavement out there. These lanes are wide open.
Moody says TxDOT officials told him they would check to see if federal rules require full-time HOV lanes or if they would allow us to follow Dallas and Houston's lead. By the way, here are some HOV lane facts for you. Via Transit, which operates our HOV lanes, says children and even infants count as passengers, allowing you to use the lanes. Motorcycles are allowed in HOV lanes, even if it's just the rider with no passenger. Finally, SAPD says you could get a ticket for up to $232 for HOV lane violations. That includes having just one occupant in the vehicle or crossing over the double white lines to illegally enter the HOV lane.
We'll let you know if TxDOT and VIA decide to open our carpool lanes to general traffic down the road. For the News 4i team, I'm Jay Avila.
The worst of the worst.
Earlier this month, Governor Greg Abbott announced strike teams and thousands of dollars in rewards for information leading to the identification and arrest of members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. Leaders in law enforcement say they're trying to deny the transnational gang any foothold in Texas.
And what we know from this organization is that it's a very well-run, kind of like a corporation.
Ari Jimenez is a retired Homeland Security agent who has seen this gang explode in major cities across the country. He says this criminal enterprise usually starts with crimes that fly below the radar: organized theft, sexual exploitation.
Next is going to be weapon-involved crimes. It's going to be a murder for hire, it's going to be a shootout, and before you know it, in a few months, they own and they control the criminal element in the city.
Intelligence documents obtained by the I-Team show self-proclaimed members and those bearing the gang's distinctive tattoos featuring a nautical compass, an eye, a rose, and a clock face have been arrested around the city's Migrant Resource Center for crimes like theft, human trafficking, possession of fake government documents, and some, including higher-profile members, had been previously arrested entering the country illegally and were subsequently released by border authorities. Back in March, for example, authorities arrested Aderbis Segundo Pirela in New Braunfels. Sources say the 29-year-old was on Colombia and Interpol's most wanted lists in connection with murders, drug trafficking, and extortion. Pirela was affiliated with the Satanas gang, which the intelligence group Insight Crime says is a faction of Tren de Aragua. According to HSI, Pirela first entered the country unlawfully in January and was arrested in El Paso and released on his own recognizance. It was later learned he was a wanted man who was considered extremely dangerous. Jimenez notes the vast majority of people entering the country aren't like Pirela, but it's that 1% of people, in his estimation, he says, should concern people the most.
It's that 1%. That 1% of individuals that we have no biometrics, no criminal history, we have no fingerprints, we have no iris scan, we don't know who they are.
And the Texas Anti-Gang Unit has indicated that the gang continues to conduct operations right here in San Antonio, in fact, making 2 arrests this week. If you have any information about the gang, you're urged to call the Texas Crime Stoppers tip line or submit a tip through DPS's website. For the News 4 I-Team, I'm Mariah Medina. Close to 36 of Texas's major counties prepare for elections a little differently from their peers when it comes to processing voter registration. That's according to state election officials.
The great majority of those counties utilize one specific vendor, and the name of that vendor is Votech.
Locally, Votech provides Bexar County a host of election services for a combined cost of approximately $286,000 taxpayer dollars for last year's election cycle. It's a bill that Bexar County paid in full, according to financial records reviewed by the I-Team. But that's not all we found. An additional payment of $49,500 was made in April of this year, then another $1,080. So what was it for?
This particular company had asked their Texas clients to pay a surcharge that was not a traditional part of their contract to help the company maintain operations.
Earlier this month, we filed an open records request for the invoices that would detail what those charges were for. Nearly a month later, Bexar County still has yet to turn those records over. We also reached out to Votech twice via email regarding the surcharge, asking why it was necessary and whether the county will be charged similar fees in the future. We didn't hear back. So we took our surcharge questions to Bexar County's longtime election administrator, Jackie Callanan. Did we get hit with that?
Yes.
According to state elections officials, some counties negotiated the surcharge down. Others declined to renew their contract with Votech. Callanan confirmed to the I-Team that the $49,500 figure was the surcharge assessed by Votech and paid by Bexar County. The surcharge seemingly flew under the radar because it was under $50,000, meaning it did not have to go before commissioners for formal approval or discussion, but we followed the money. Unlike some of Votech's other Texas clients, records show earlier this month Bexar County re-upped its contract with Votech for this election cycle to the tune of $359,000. We're going to continue to monitor that contract.
Asking the tough questions, getting results for you. The News 4 I-Team is here for you.